Back in the 80s, Mario and Donkey Kong were icons, and while at first Mario got a little bit more attention than DK, that all changed in the 90s with the Donkey Kong Country series. These games were cherished by many as being on par and in some ways even better than Mario's 2D adventures, having much more of an emphasis on atmosphere and difficulty. And as Mario entered the 3D era in the 90s, DK followed suit with the iconic Donkey Kong 64. This game is far from perfect, but it was a gigantic 3D adventure, filled with hours of content, and full of the charm fans had come to expect from the series. But as time went on, DK's adventures became few and far between, with the character mostly being delegated to spin-offs and, bongo games? And when he would get a big outing, it was never as big as Mario's current 3D adventure, and led to fans begging for Nintendo to give the ape the spotlight again and truly show everyone that he could deliver on an adventure that rivaled even Mario's. And after years of rumors and fan speculation that the 3D Mario team was hard at work on a 3D Donkey Kong game, the world would finally get a peek at this new game when Donkey Kong Bananza was announced during a Nintendo Switch 2 presentation. This game looked to finally be DK's big return to the spotlight, featuring open level design with terrain that could be destroyed and molded to your liking. It was amazing. And now that the game's been out for a while, I want to take a look back at it and see what makes it such a genius entry in the Donkey Kong series. So, without further ado, my name is Mariomikester, and welcome to a Donkey Kong Bananza retrospective. After development was completed on Super Mario Odyssey in late 2017, the team behind it wasn't given much of a break, as Mario director and producer Yoshiaki Koizumi asked the team to create a 3D Donkey Kong game. Donkey Kong hadn't received a new game since Tropical Freeze in 2014, and one hadn't been developed internally at Nintendo since all the way back in 2004 with DK Jungle Beat. Koizumi's goal with this game was to expand the Donkey Kong franchise, as he felt it was far too dormant for such an iconic character. And similar to how Mario had separate 2D and 3D games, Koizumi wanted the same for the DK series. Although Koizumi didn't serve as director or producer, instead appointing Mario Odyssey director Kenta Motakura as producer, his influence and role in the project was very important, being a direct consultant for the team on various aspects of the game. One of the main things that inspired the core gameplay of Bananza was when a programmer on the Odyssey team began experimenting with voxel technology. Voxels are basically tiny 3D blocks, and with the right programming, it can be made so when the player interacts with these voxels, say with a punch, the game removes those tiny blocks, and the world can be destroyed naturally. This technology had been used sparsely in Odyssey in the Snow Kingdom to plow through snow, and in the Luncheon Kingdom to destroy cheese, but this programmer wanted to go even farther, and created a prototype of a Goomba with hands destroying terrain. The team found this gameplay surprisingly satisfying, and realized that not only would it be an interesting core mechanic for a game, but that Donkey Kong's brute strength was a perfect fit for this. And so the iconic smashing gameplay of Donkey Kong Bananza was born. But since almost every single piece of terrain needed to be breakable, millions and millions of voxels needed to be rendered. And since this game began development for the Switch 1, keeping the game running at 60 FPS with pretty visuals was something the team just couldn't make happen. So, around 2021, development was shifted to the Nintendo Switch 2. With the console's superior power, it was now very easy for the team to have the game run at a stable 60 FPS, while maintaining the pretty visuals they wanted the game to feature. Another issue they ran into pretty early into development was Donkey Kong's design. In order to make him as appealing and expressive as possible, they realized they were going to need to change up his design a bit. The redesign first appeared in the Mario movie in 2023, but was actually initially made for Bananza, and other projects going on at the time like Mario Kart World just ran with it. This redesign was met with a bit of backlash at first, but I and many others have gotten pretty accustomed to the new design and understand why it needed to happen for the character to be more appealing. And as development wrapped up around the time of the Switch 2's release, Donkey Kong Bananza was released worldwide on July 17th, 2025. Upon starting the game, you're told that we're far off the shores of DK Island, at a place called Ingot Isle, where DK has gotten all dressed up in mining gear to find bananas. This opening area gives you ample terrain to smash and throw around to get used to DK's controls. I remember one of the first things I noticed during my initial playthrough was just how slick DK felt to control. I mean, you'd expect someone of his size to be heavy to control and all around be a little wonky, but the team did a great job at making his movement feel slick and precise. As you continue on though, DK is eventually swept up by a giant storm created by an enormous meteor, and Ingot Isle is forcefully pushed underground by said meteor. Through all the commotion in the underground, DK finds and befriends the Odd Rock, and with the rock's singing power is able to destroy the Voidco machines that plague the underground. This opening is honestly really good. I don't know if a lot of other people had this thought going into the game, but I was really worried that Bananza would be far too similar to Odyssey in its general gameplay outside of the smashing stuff. I remember being excited seeing this game, but ultimately worried it would be Mario Odyssey with Donkey Kong. Thankfully, this opening alone proved to me just how different this game is from Odyssey. Yes, collecting the abundance of bananas is similar to the abundance of moons from Odyssey, but that's just a result of the type of 3D collectathon that this game is. Bananza doesn't use the terrain smashing as a cool gimmick that's solely reserved for digging to find collectibles underground. It's incorporated into the level design in a genius way. And I think this opening has a fantastic example with this bramble here. You physically have to pull rock up from the ground and use it as a blunt object to break the bramble. And to me, that's a really cool way this game initially shows off just how important Donkey Kong's punches and strength are going to be throughout the game. Alongside that, the Odd Rock singing to break those Voidco machines is just really satisfying. And singing to break those machines became something I look forward to just because of how good it felt to do it, and see the stuff that opened up because of it. In the end, this opening not only does an amazing job at introducing the player to DK and his mechanics, but also at separating this game from Mario even though it's made by the same team. After the opening though, you finally find out who is in the Odd Rock. And surprise surprise, it's Pauline from Donkey Kong. Yes, although Pauline looks a little bit different from the one we're used to, and has led to many theories regarding when this game takes place in the Mario timeline and the general canonicity of this game, I have an idea about it. Personally, I think Nintendo didn't really think too hardly about this, but do retroactively make it make some sort of sense. Basically, throughout the game, Pauline talks a lot about her grandmother. And as we know, the Donkey Kong from the original arcade game back in 1982 is Cranky Kong. So what I think is that Pauline's grandmother is the lady that got kidnapped by Cranky all the way back then, which explains why Pauline here is so young. It's also very clear this is the same Pauline we see grown up in Odyssey, because both of them have a fascination with singing, and it would be really stupid if they were completely different characters. One of the things I think I and many others were worried about when we found out that Pauline would be our sidekick throughout this adventure was that she would be annoying. Sidekicks like this have a tendency to talk a lot, and instead of leaving it up to the player to figure things out, the sidekick would chime in and say, "Hey, have you tried doing this very specific thing at this very specific place?" And generally just taking away from the fun of figuring things out yourself. Thankfully though, instead of just being an annoying sidekick, Pauline plays an important role in the story and has a genuine character arc, which I loved. She starts off super shy and doesn't want to sing for anyone, but after her and DK get closer, she decides she'll sing only for him. But eventually throughout the game, gets over that fear and becomes the fearless singer we know from Odyssey. I thought her arc throughout the game was incredibly cool, and kind of sent a message to players to follow their dreams, whatever they may be. Her dynamic with DK is also very cute. Their friendship comes across incredibly naturally, and I didn't mind listening to their interactions, and actually kind of enjoyed how well they got along. So props to Nintendo for writing an actually good sidekick. Who knows, maybe the Metroid Prime series will learn from this one day. Then there's the levels. The stages in this game take place in the underground, with each level representing a layer underground. I wasn't sure how to feel about these at first, but they're incredible. There's so much variety here, and while I won't be able to talk about every layer, I do want to highlight some of my favorites. Starting off with the resort layer. Beach levels are some of my favorites in video games. You got the entirety of Mario Sunshine, Beach Bowl Galaxy, Seaside Kingdom from Odyssey. I just love the vibes of a beach level, and Donkey Kong Bonanza blew me away with the resort layer. Almost immediately I was reminded of the board Mega Fruit Paradise from Super Mario Party, with them both having an emphasis on the beach and fruit. Seriously, those giant strawberries that you dive punch into are so cool. Speaking of punching though, one of the things I couldn't stop doing here is just digging in the sand. I mean, I was already a fan of the digging mechanic in this game, but here in the beach, it just felt so natural and led to me sitting here for a while just digging holes and having a grand old time at the beach. The resort layer also sees the introduction of this rainbow-like terrain that sends you flying into the air if you grab it. You can also direct these enemies that hold it, and depending on the trajectory of where you punch them, a giant rainbow road will appear that you can walk across to reach new areas. This idea is super cool, and it's just another thing this game throws at you midway throughout the adventure to just say, here's this idea we had. Overall, the resort layer was a place I just kicked back and relaxed in, and I think that's exactly what the developers intended for you to do here. Next up, we have the racing layer. I remember the biggest smile crossing my face as soon as this place loaded in, and I saw the giant Diddy and Dixie Kong trophy that oversaw the entire layer. Here, DK meets back up with his adventure pals Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, who are somehow involved in this whole underground thing. I don't really care how they're here, but they're here. In the underground, the two have created Rambi Racing, which is pretty self-explanatory, but you basically just race Rambi. The main mission here is to train up enough to beat Dixie and Diddy at their own race. And while beating them is pretty easy, I couldn't stop smiling the entire time I was down here. I mean, they had literally no reason to include this in the game, as it feels out of place in the best way possible, but they did. Using the rainbow material to create an optimal path for you to take on the upcoming laps is so fun, and led to me redoing this race a couple times to see just how optimal of a path I could create. Spoiler alert, it was not that optimal. One thing I noticed playing this game again for this video though, is if you have the DLC and talk to Squawks here, you can actually explore the DLC DK Island early as some sort of memory Donkey Kong has. This was really cool to me. And while in a perfect world this is just in the base game, like how the Mushroom Kingdom was in Odyssey, it's still an insanely cool addition that I can't help but not talk about. Also, when you win the race, destroying as much of the gold trophy as you can is a lot of fun. You don't get as much gold as you think you would, but it's still really satisfying. Finally, there's the feast layer. I think out of the three I mentioned, this has gotta be my absolute favorite. As while the other two I mentioned are pretty small layers when compared to the other ones this game has to offer, this one is gigantic and I love it. The Feast Layer is a food-themed amusement park, and wow did they cook with this one. Literally. Your main goal is to hit all 5 burger switches spread throughout the park to stack a burger big enough to reach the giant Ferris wheel that's been corrupted by Voidco. One of the main gimmicks here is the green muck, which can be dissolved by throwing salt at it, and man is this satisfying. Fitting in with the theme of this being an amusement park though, each burger switch challenge feels like an attraction at an amusement park. This level brought back lots of memories of Peanut Park from Mario Sunshine, but if it was done with today's technology. The attractions are great. Running up this fried terrain with the zebra bonanza, carefully navigating the swinging pendulums that mimic those pirate ship rides, riding the fries along this deep fryer ride, and beating up the Mad Mixer, which takes a page right out of Peanut Park's book, with this boss fight that sees you throwing explosives at it while you're riding across a roller coaster, is so cool. And there's even a sub-layer of this level that feels like you're exploring the inside of a deep fryer oven with all the muck and metal everywhere. Overall, the levels in this game are amazing. Not only are they incredibly unique, but they're just plain fun to explore. You have layers I didn't mention like the Radiance layer, which plays around with this really cool light idea, the Groove layer, which is all about music, and the Canyon layer, which feels right out of a Donkey Kong Country level, and they all do an impeccable job at immersing you in this underground world. You also have the skill tree and different bonanzas you collect throughout your adventure. The skill tree is something I would have honestly never expected in a 3D platformer like this, but it's awesome. How it works is when you collect 5 bananas, you gain a skill point. Different skills cost a different amount of skill points, and leads to this whole gameplay mechanic where you have to choose between saving up skill points to unlock a really cool skill, or spending them as soon as you get them on minor skills. Outside of 100% completion, I think the skill points are a really cool incentive for players to collect bananas, as you can literally upgrade DK by doing so. Whereas the only incentive in a game like Odyssey was to collect them to get to the next kingdom. Then there's the Bananzas. I think these have got to be the most underrated aspect of the entire game. I was a bit iffy at first, but after unlocking a few, I couldn't stop using them whenever possible. The Bananzas are unique forms DK unlocks by jamming with the Elders in different layers in the underground. You have the Kong Bananza, which basically turns DK into King Kong and lets him smash anything with ease. The Zebra Bananza, which allows you to run at high speeds and traverse weak terrain that would usually break below you. The Ostrich Bananza, which lets you glide. The Elephant Bananza, which lets you suck up terrain and throw it back at enemies or just the ground. And finally, the Snake Bananza, which allows you to jump really high and slow down time. I think the most useful of the bunch here is the Elephant Bananza and Kong Bananza, as the strong punches from the Kong and the ability to suck up terrain from the Elephant are key in a lot of layers and generally make things easier. Other than the Zebra Bananza, which is incredibly situational, I did find myself using the Snake and Ostrich a lot as well. The gliding is super useful for crossing large gaps, and the jumps and time freeze of the Snake can be very helpful for general platforming. I'm a big fan of the Bananzas. I think they add a fun spin to the gameplay, and make this whole entry stand out in the DK series for doing something really new. They do feel weird at first, but when contrasted with the rest of the wackiness of this game, I think it feels right at home. Finally, there's the big bad of this game, Void Kong. Throughout your journey, you deal with Void and his goons as they try to reach the planet core to harvest the Banandium root for their own personal gain. However, as you time and time again defeat his goons, they eventually grow tired of Void's selfish ideals, and quit their job working for him to help you. I found this idea really funny and honestly kind of realistic. Throughout the years, we've had goons who blindly follow their boss's biddings, but here we have goons who begin to realize that the money is not worth it, and makes me like these characters a lot. Void, though, is not happy with this, and as you get to what he thinks is the planet core in the Banandium route, you're instead greeted by this. Yes, King K. Rool is back. I audibly gasped during this moment and almost screamed with how excited I was. I mean, King K. Rool hasn't appeared in a Donkey Kong game in over 26 years, and here he is appearing at the climax of the story to destroy the main villain with one punch. Man, this was cool. After his cruel introduction, he reveals that him and the Kremling crew have been trapped down here for a while, as a long time ago, he too seeks the Banandium root. After this, we get to see the Kremling crew in action, and I just couldn't stop smiling here. I mean, you got the Kremlings, the Neckies, the Zingers. They're all here, and playing through the following sections felt like the biggest return of that classic Donkey Kong Country cast. And then there's the fights with K. Rool himself. The first is pretty easy and sees you basically just beating him up, while the second has got to be one of the most aura moments in a video game I've ever seen. not only do we get the return of the fake credits, but we also get to hear a brand new rendition of Gangplank Galleon. And although this second fight just sees you throwing Bananza at him to avoid him attacking you, listening to this iconic theme as you barrel towards the surface is nothing short of amazing. Once you make it to the surface though, things get even crazier, because you end up in New Donk City. Although we could very much deduce this from the fact that Pauline's whole goal is to get home, seeing this fully realized version of New Donk City was so cool for me. Here K. Rool reaches his full power and terrorizes the city, with you having to reenact the classic Donkey Kong trope of climbing up to the top, with each section being marked with meters just like in the arcade game. The final battle with K. Rool takes place in a giant boxing ring, just like DK64, and this fight is crazy. Here K. Rool becomes the King of Rot, and you slowly have to deal damage to him over time when openings appear during his insane attacks. Seriously, this giant handball freaked me out the first time I saw it. I had no idea what to do. And there's nothing more satisfying in this game than landing that final hit. Donkey Kong Bonanza is an amazing game. It was born out of Koizumi's desire to expand the Donkey Kong series and bring it back to its glory days. No more random new enemy who appears to cause DK trouble. Nah, this time they brought back the big bad everyone missed, King K. Rool, and created one of the coolest final sequences in any Nintendo game in my honest opinion. The terrain smashing fits right in with DK's insane physical strength, and I'll never get tired of smashing up levels. Speaking of the levels, these are some of my favorites in the entire Donkey Kong series. You have the relaxing atmosphere of the resort layer and the energetic amusement park in the feast layer. Seriously, they hit it out of the park with not only making these levels unique, but fun to explore. And then there's the Bonanzas. Giving DK these wild new forms may at first seem a little odd, but it totally works out in the end, as you get these bizarre but very useful forms that make platforming that much more fun. Donkey Kong Bonanza is my 2025 Game of the Year and is one I will never forget.